So ethos, pathos, and logos are the essence of persuasion in general.
So for example, in the mornings, I like to take cold showers. This is like a recent thing that I've started. And there's a real benefit to it, at least personally. I can't talk to you about the scientific benefits, but to me personally, during the day, I just feel happy. Like it's tingly, I'm feeling good.
If somebody is trying to sell you some, smart glasses, let's say you walk in, this can do everything. You can watch major motion pictures in full stereo and, at the same time spy on all your friends. And it's got x-ray, you can see people naked. I succeeded in a way I never thought I could. When I reached the top on my birthday, the conditions were really bad. I mean, you boil, your body generates so much heat, it's the equivalent of taking a liter of ice and boiling it.
Welcome, Mr. Jay Heinrichs, and your beautiful book, Aristotle's Guide to Self-Persuasion. I'm super excited to chat with you today. Thanks for joining. First of all, you're a New York Times bestselling author. So I know you're super busy on your 150-acre land out in New Jersey, was it? New Hampshire?
New Hampshire. Big difference.
I'm sure it is. I'm down in Florida. I grew up in California, so I do enjoy good weather. And then I do know bad weather, which is in Florida. But we do get a lot of sunshine down here, as opposed to the East Coast. So how are you?
I'm doing well. And speaking of bad weather, New Hampshire has the highest winds ever recorded. So,
well, really?
Yeah. Florida has hurricanes. We have even higher winds.
No kidding. Okay. Now, how do you cope with that? What do you do?
Well, just don't go onto mountain summits when it's over 200 miles an hour. That's where the highest winds were recorded, in the tallest mountain in the Northeast. We just have things like black flies and deer flies and cold and ice and snow. But I'm a skier. I love the winter. So, and no bugs in the winter. And you got us beat in bugs in Florida. Just saying.
They are terrible down here. But what would be nice is those winds, if we could balance them a little bit, because when it's windy, the mosquitoes are just gone.
There you go.
And I learned recently that dragonflies eat 100 mosquitoes a day. So I'm like, let's go. How do we invite more dragonflies?
More dragonflies, more bats.
Bats too. Okay. Might be a little scary. We'll see.
Oh, bats are wonderful. They're the cutest things in the world till they bite you.
Until they bite you. Okay. That's going to be kind of challenging. We'll see. We'll see. So you're on 150 acres out there. Man, you must see some wildlife, like bears.
Yeah. And, actually, we just moved 3 days ago, fairly close by, but to an apartment. And I'm still in mourning giving this up. We had wildlife galore. We had 3 bear dens on our land. I was constantly seeing moose and river otters and beavers, built dams all through our land. So I'll be back. In fact, I'll continue to come back and cut firewood. Our apartment has a fireplace, so
okay,
I won't miss it too much.
Got it. So you still have the land. You just moved closer to the...
No, we sold the place to people who are going to allow me, in return for my helping maintain 10K of ski trails, to cut firewood.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I still have this is a town, the Orange, New Hampshire, where our land was a town of 278 people. And we pretty much knew them. So we still have friends. I'll be back a lot. Part of this is, how to deal with loss in general. I turned 70 the day after we moved, just a few days ago. And, with age comes loss of all sorts, including of, your body's own ability to run up mountains or whatever. So, part of it is that ability to see certain kinds of loss is really a gain. And I'm feeling that right now. We moved to Hanover, New Hampshire, just off the Dartmouth campus. And we have lots of friends at Dartmouth, where I worked for some time. So it's all good. And, having that kind of positive attitude has to do with changing the voice in your head.
Yes.
And that has to do with important elements of persuasion. If you can persuade others, you should be able, with certain techniques, to persuade yourself as well.
I completely agree. I think a lot of it is, like you're saying, and I want to learn definitely during this pod, what is it that drives people? What are some of the techniques you use or you teach for folks to persuade themselves? Like if you're going through a difficult time, such as moving from 150 acres of beautiful land where there's bears and moose and, even the wind is a problem, but now that you're away from that, there's got to be that loss. And, how do you deal with it? How do you persuade yourself that this is a good move and a good decision that you made?
Yeah. So we can talk in general about what are the elements of persuasion. And I go all the way back to Aristotle, who literally wrote the book on rhetoric in the first place. And Aristotle said there are 3 elements to persuasion. Ethos, as he called it, which is what your audience believes your character to be. And I'll get to how you do that with self-persuasion in a minute, how you get yourself to trust and like your own character. But that's what ethos is, whether your audience trusts you and feels you're part of their tribe. The second element is logos, which we often see as logic, but it's a lot more than that. It has to do with the rational side of persuasion, but also the actual words you use in order to change the voice in your head or the voice in the heads of your audience. And lastly, there's pathos, which has to do with emotion and also your ability to understand the emotions of your audience, including your own, and manipulate those emotions or change them. So ethos, pathos, and logos are the essence of persuasion in general. Now, when you're talking about persuading yourself, the question is, what's your audience? And that stumped me for some time until I read what I think is Aristotle's weirdest book, which is called On the Soul, where he describes what he believes to be the soul. Now, in most world religions, the soul is something that's almost separate from your body. When you die, it keeps on going. Aristotle didn't think so. In fact, he spent a lot of time trying to speculate what organ in the body is the soul. Years later, another philosopher, Descartes, said, I found it. It's the pituitary gland.
Nice.
So the ability to, but the way Aristotle described your soul is really what you wish you saw in the mirror, like your superior self, your noblest self. And what Aristotle said was one of the deepest sources of unhappiness is when your daily behavior violates what your soul wants you to be. And so I talk in the book about how to detect that soul of yours and then how to try to live up to it. And part of that entails trying to convince your soul that you're worthy of it. That's all about persuasion. Your soul, in other words, is your audience.
That makes a lot of sense. I was going to say like the other side of the brain, but then in my mind, as you were kind of explaining it, I'm thinking, well, what is that other side? You talked about the mirror, then the soul, and it makes sense because it's kind of like when they say, if you get a brain transplant, did you really just get a body transplant? Because really you are your brain, right? So it's very difficult to point to like, okay, this exactly is my soul and that's who you're communicating with. But oftentimes I do find myself essentially talking to myself, right? And I think I'm basically talking to my soul at that point.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you get it. And so that voice you have in your head, when you screw something up, and I do it all the time. It's like, Jay, you're such an idiot.
Right.
That's
right.
Basically that's my soul talking to me. And my point is then if I can laugh at what I did and say, okay, that's a temporary lapse. I can fix this thing. That's me talking to the soul. So it's a dialogue. It goes both ways.
Okay, so you're essentially trying to persuade yourself, and yourself means your soul. So for example, in the mornings, I like to take cold showers. This is like a recent thing that I've started. And there's a real benefit to it, at least personally. I can't talk to you about the scientific benefits, but to me personally, during the day, I just feel happy. Like it's tingly, I'm feeling good. I can walk out into the hot weather for a little bit longer than usual. Not a lot of things bother me during the day, but it's that initial persuasion that I have to do to turn on the cold shower, jump in it, and then just like, you lose your breath, and then like 10 or 15 seconds later, it just kind of warms up and you're fine, you're feeling great, I did it, and then the next day you try to do it again. And so it's like that initial persuasion where, I'm not really talking to myself. It's kind of like, you just have to go, just do it. What are you waiting for? Just get in there and get it over with. That's how I persuade myself in the morning.
So there are a couple of elements here that Aristotle actually wrote about. One is that the fact that you chose to do that, knowing what the results would be, even though it's momentarily unpleasant, there's a longer term effect that lasts all day for you. That's how you distinguish what kind of soul you have. Because what Aristotle said is you need to separate your wants from your needs. Your wants, he called your appetites. And that is like, you shouldn't have, 4 gin and tonics after work. You're going to suffer in the long run. But that may be what you want at the moment, especially after the first one. You just want the second, Now that's your appetite. Your need, your actual need is something that you were tapping into with that shower, which is basically, what you need is to be able to have a discipline that makes you happy during the day. And that starts with your body temperature. Okay. So now you do that day after day and it kind of becomes routine. Aristotle wrote about that too. He was the original philosopher of habits. And basically he said, we are an adaptable species. And once we adapt to things, they become the norm. So if you stop by Dunkin' Donuts for a donut every morning, first time you do it, it's an absolute delight. The 300th time you do it, you don't even notice the donut.
Right.
And so you can adjust, I bet that shower after time becomes easier. The first time was hardest.
Certainly. I find myself sometimes I'm just kind of standing there going, what kind of schedule do I have? Do I really want to feel good today? Or should I just wait until the water warms up? And it's usually I just overpower the soul or convince the soul and persuade the soul in this case to say, just get it done. Stop wasting time. Just get it done.
The other thing you said earlier was you said to yourself, just do it.
Yeah.
The Nike policy.
Exactly.
And the important thing about that is that you're removing the choice. And that's actually a form of persuasion with your soul. You're basically saying, this isn't a choice. It's not a choice. I'm not making a decision. The moment you make a decision, you're getting out of what Aristotle called receptivity and what behavior is called cognitive ease. which is this relaxed feeling that you're in power. When you start thinking too hard, you get yourself out of that feeling. And that's when your brain starts using more oxygen and everything can fall apart. It's like taking a math exam. You're not going to be able to make any decisions while you're doing that because your brain's working too hard. And Aristotle believed that that's what happens. They remove choice. They remove the decision. To use the analogy of flossing, imagine if you just described flossing the very first time you discovered it. You know that there were lots of benefits of flossing. But on the other hand, the first time you're reading the manual on how to use the floss, you're thinking, this is terrible. I mean, first of all, it's disgusting. And then I've got to wrap this thing wet around each tooth. And how many teeth do I have? And how long is this going to take? And I'm really tired and it's bedtime. Why am I doing this? I've been doing this thing for years and I don't even think about it. If I don't do it, I feel like I'm missing something. Now, in the book, I actually described many years ago when I was still single, there was this really hot dental hygienist when I was going to the dentist. And she starts flossing me. She says, I don't go out on a second date until I flossed a man. What? And meanwhile, she's like flossing me lovingly. And she says, while she's doing it, peering into my mouth, and she says, you look like you're a regular flosser. I bet you don't even bleed. And I was thinking, are we getting it on here? Is this a romantic gesture? She did give me her number. I never called it because I thought that was kind of weird. But that was her idea of foreplay was, flossing. Now, what she was doing, though, was saying basically she was judging people's souls by whether they were disciplined enough to floss every day, whether they're capable of getting good habits. And you know what? There are worse ways to choose a mate than somebody who flosses every day.
I believe it. And you're trying to get it just down right and at the angle. And then eventually, like you said, it just becomes nature and second habit. You don't even think about it.
Exactly. I call it choicelessness.
Right. There are points where you have to make a decision and really you have to persuade somebody else to make a decision. And that gets a little bit challenging because internally, maybe you're a good decision maker. Maybe you've already kind of mastered that. Like you said, remove the choice, just do it. You're done. But when you have to talk about it in business or entrepreneurship, maybe you're selling something, what are some techniques folks can internalize and use day to day when they're selling something?
Yeah, that's a really important question. And again, I'm going to start with Aristotle, but there's a lot of neuroscience behind this. So Aristotle said, first of all, when you're talking about persuasion, you're really talking about three things. The ancients were big on threes. The easiest thing to do is to change somebody's mood. Especially salespeople are really good at that, right? Getting you to relax. They tend to have a great sense of humor. They can read what kind of humor seems appropriate for their audience. Yeah, humor can be, but it's also very dangerous, of course, because it can turn people off. Reading people's emotions are really good for that. And then changing the emotion can be a matter of if someone's angry, there are techniques that you can use to change their mood and calm them down. All right, that's the easiest thing to do. You can do that right on the fly, is getting someone to make a choice, especially the choice you want them to make. If you're selling a product or a service, or getting them to take you on as a consultant or whatever. That's harder. Hardest of all is actually to get them to act. Now, if you look at, there are rock concerts that have been done for years for young voters who don't vote. Right. And getting them to show up for the concert, get the t-shirt and everything, getting them to support that candidate, you're all good. They're making a choice. Getting them to go to the polls, notoriously, is difficult. And that's true in general. You can convince someone that your product is the very best, but getting them actually to buy it is the hardest of all. The ways to do that have to do with what I've interpreted from Aristotle as the lure in the ramp. So the very first thing you want to do is to make sure that they desire whatever that action is, buying a product or signing a contract, okay? You need to get them in the mood. You need to get them to make a choice. To get them actually to act, you have to get them to desire what the result is. That has to do with describing a wonderful future, which is not just, this is a great product, but here's what the product can do for you. Here's how it's going to change your life. Okay, the second thing is the ramp. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. It works really well for establishing a new habit. And it also can help if you're really patient in selling something. So the ramp has to do with making the first step seem ridiculously easy, and easy to the point where you just feel stupid not doing it. So for example, if somebody is trying to sell you some, smart glasses, let's say you walk in, this can do everything. You watch major motion pictures in full stereo and, at the same time, spy on all your friends. And it's got X-ray. You can see people naked. Right? You describe the product, the person is really interested. This is like an early adopter kind of person who loves gear. Getting them actually to buy it, though, you don't want to say, so, here's the price. Got the money? The ramp entails doing something like, now, give me your email and I'm going to send you a series of demonstrations that will blow your mind to make it feel like you're wearing these glasses. And of course, you ask them questions. Do you like, the tropics? I'll send you there. That kind of thing. It's like, give me your information and I will send you information or entertainment, whatever you want. The second step along that ramp would then be to say, hey, are you really interested in me sending you more information? More specifically, tell me what would work best for you within your budget. And then let's take a look at some products and set up a call or a Zoom so that I can get you just exactly the right kind of glasses. All right, now in terms of habits, it works much the same way. One of the things that I did to build a ramp for this ridiculous goal I had set for myself, I had given myself an experiment to be the first person over 50 to run up a mountain in New Hampshire where Olympians test their fitness. It's the perfect mountain for this sort of thing. I wanted to be the first person over age 50 ever to run my age up this mountain, which is running it in fewer minutes than I was old in years. I was turning 50. Nobody had ever done it over 50, and only a dozen people had ever done it in history, in recorded history. So it's a stupid goal, ridiculously pointless. And that was a way to persuade myself that I wanted to test these tools of self-persuasion. In order to do that, I had to devote myself to 3 or 4 hours a day of training. And not only that, but I had a terrible hip problem that needed to be cured first with a whole lot of painful PT. All this stuff was not only to test the persuasion, but also to test that idea of the lure and the ramp. The lure, I had to convince myself that running up this Mount Moosilauke in New Hampshire was the most wonderful thing in the world and would prove me a mountain god and the athlete I never was.
Sure, absolutely.
Right. Then the ramp, on the other hand, how was I going to do that? I wasn't going to just launch myself into training because I didn't want to. I knew I had to get up first thing in the morning in order to do this. So the very first thing I did was to declare my own time zone. I call it daylight savings because I'm Jay.
Okay.
And I waited until the fall when the US government grants us an extra hour by getting rid of daylight savings and switching to standard. Okay. So I woke up the same time in the morning, only now the clock said it was an hour earlier. And I did it again the following year. So now I'm getting up 2 hours earlier at 4 o'clock in the morning versus the 6 o'clock I had been getting up. That's daylight savings. So at 4 o'clock.
Go forward one year and then back. So you're really back to the same starting point. Okay, I see. This is like the Chuck Norris scenario where, this Chuck Norris that we're watching now, he decides what time it is.
Exactly. Yeah. I created my own time zone because why not? I mean, everyone could do that, but I did. My name, Jay, you can't call it daylight saving, but I can.
It's yours. Yeah. It belongs to you.
All right. So then during that first time in the morning, the first year I did this was, just an extra hour, 5:30 in the morning Eastern time, but my own time zone. That became 2 hours. The first thing I did was I deliberately didn't exercise. I put my phone away, turned it off, and just read books because that was good for me. And then after a while, I got bored with reading that much of the morning, especially when it turned into 2 hours. And I did a super easy yoga routine. Then that morphed into more and more difficult routines over time. See, I was ramping up.
Right.
Same thing I did with my diet, which really had to change. I just gradually changed the nutrition so that I needed to lose 28 pounds. So I did that over the course of a year. But I did that gradually, just, one thing at a time.
Can I ask you a question on that? Okay, somebody might be listening going, well, I'm more of I just got to rip the Band-Aid off. Otherwise, I'm going to just convince myself. It's just more time for me to off-ramp myself. What do you tell those people?
Well, I think the most important thing is, and I'm just going to throw one tool at you after another here. One of them is called Kairos. This is the rhetorical principle of using time to your advantage in general. So you don't live by the clock. One of the things to think about is long-term versus short-term. The Greeks were brilliant at this. You have to say to yourself, okay, rip the Band-Aid off. And I'm going to make myself the athlete I never was. And the first thing I'm going to do is do a super hard workout right in the beginning. And I know it's going to hurt. I'm willing to do it. I'm going to be in dire pain 2 days from now, but I'm still going to do it because I'm that kind of guy. I'm a Nike guy.
Yep.
Now, you have to think when you're doing that, and this is the really important part. What are you doing a year from now? Are you going to be doing that workout a year from now? And what are the...
Is it consistent? Can you maintain that level of effort?
Exactly. Can you turn this into a habit? Now, very, very few people can. And the problem is, what happens is two things. First, people will pursue these crazy exercises that hurt them, physically, but also just are too hard and life gets in the way. They fail to do the habit and they fail. On the other hand, you get doctors telling you, oh, work out, go for a brisk walk 15 minutes a day. It won't do you that much good, but it's better than nothing.
Right.
Because doctors constantly hear patients say, I can't, I don't. Most important of all here, and here's another big element, back to ethos, this idea of what your audience thinks you are, whether they like and trust you. The important thing is to stop saying something like, I don't sweat. because that's emphasizing an identity of a non-sweater. You're basically saying, I am not the person who sweats. And you have to be able to say to yourself, I can change who I am that way. I am not a person who sweats, but that just means I don't like to.
Right. So these are like the folks that say, oh no, I never do X, Y, or Z. And therefore that's just like the box they put themselves in, keeping themselves, concealed or hidden from making those difficult decisions.
That you're essentially saying subconsciously, my soul doesn't do this. And that's not true. Your soul does. So my daily behavior, I'm rationalizing with my soul, and I'm violating my soul even by doing that. So the important thing here is to let yourself know that you're better than this. That's the important thing. Your soul is better than your daily behavior, but you can change that daily behavior. I use the analogy, which is a lot easier, of napping. I'm a champion napper.
Okay, we're getting somewhere now. This should be pretty easy to do.
Well, it's harder than people think, actually, that, getting to start a nap needs a ramp. A lot of people think I'm not a napper. That's so lame. That's just laziness. People made fun of Ronald Reagan because he napped every day. I hear all the time, I'm not a napper. I don't nap. And again, that's an identity problem. That's something that can change. Now, circumstances can get in the way, no question about it. Like, people have demanding jobs. They don't have a place to put their feet up. But, if you drive your car to work and your car is pretty comfortable, there's a napping spot right there. And again, napping is a skill that has to be developed over time. So you can ramp up to that. I do it by listening to audiobooks. And what I've learned to do is listen to the same few audiobooks over and over again.
I learned, somebody told me this a long time ago, to go to sleep, and I've never had a problem sleeping since they told me this. And the way it works is you close your eyes, obviously, and you focus on thinking of nothing. And you focus on the darkness behind your eyelid, which is like pitch dark. And then you focus on nothing. It's like an abyss. And if you can hold that for just a few seconds, I wake up in the morning, I'm just gone, I disappear. They taught me this at least 15 years ago. And ever since, I've been really comfortable sleeping. There's been like 2 or 3 occasions where I just had a crazy amount of stress where I couldn't sleep that night because I was focusing on that item. But ever since I implemented this, it's been phenomenal. I don't know what it is exactly.
Oh, you make me sleepy. I also think there's a particular island in a remote wilderness lake in Maine that my wife and I had gone to, and I hope we will go back next summer, year after year. And I would have the place to myself, and I would put up a hammock, like a camping hammock, and I would read books and sleep. Nice. And I return to that in my head. And some people, that visualization can really help. Different techniques, everybody should try them, there's no question. Sure. But getting to sleep is a skill, and it's really important to see it that way. Persuading yourself, getting confidence, overcoming imposter syndrome, all this stuff that we deal with at work. One way to do that is to know who you are, and that you're at the basis of you deep down is something really important and more noble than you are from day to day. And that can help you change your behavior.
I'm very curious about your running strategy and then ultimately what the outcome was. So how long did it take you from unwrapping yourself to running up this mountain like a crazy person?
The serious training began 9 months before my birthday. And I decided I would run on my birthday for several reasons. One, to increase the pressure on myself, to make a better story, because I knew I was going to write a book.
Yeah.
But also because I got an extra minute, because I turned an extra year. That gave me 1 more minute to run up the mountain.
Oh, there you go.
So I started with essentially hiking, and at the same time I was undergoing a therapy called neuroprolotherapy, which was this experimental procedure a doctor had found. Nothing else had worked for my snapping hip syndrome, which was the problem I had.
Right.
Really disgusting. So this doctor gave me several hundred shots of dextrose, sugar water, in order to deliberately cause pain in these nerves, because the pain was giving this kind of feedback loop. It was tightening my gluteal muscles, which caused my iliotibial band that goes up your legs over your hip to catch on the hip bone. And so by flooding the zone, these multiple injections into the nerves in my hips and glutes, it was able to sort of confuse the nerves to the point where they would stop firing and allow my gluteal muscles to relax. This took some weeks, but it actually worked. Now, all the time this was happening, each one of these shots was like a wasp sting. It was really painful. And we were talking, it's 180 shots in just the first session. And I would have told this doctor anything. It's like, here's my bank account number, just use it, stop, please.
I know.
But at the time I was thinking, and this is an important rhetorical tool called framing or reframing, which is how you determine what an issue is. And I said to myself, this isn't just pain, this is training. I'm at training. Training's painful, and I'm really good at training. I can be very disciplined. So this is something that really important principle in general is seeing pain as suffering. And suffering, when you undergo any kind of pain, which can be the social pain of going to a party when you're shy, pain is suffering. Suffering is your ability to withstand pain, to deal with pain. So suffering isn't just what you go through, it's a skill. The skill of suffering is the ability to get yourself through any kind of pain. And this can have to do with grief over losing a loved one. It can be, the pain of exercise, the pain of a new habit, whatever. If you see this sort of thing as a skill, it allows you to undergo any kind of difficulty thinking, I'm actually in training for something. I'm getting better at this by undergoing this kind of pain. And so that really started me on this whole idea that I might be really good at the training part of running up a mountain, but which, by the way, is one of the more painful things to do.
Yeah, it is. Oh my gosh, running up a mountain when you're out of breath, and then hopefully you have the 200-mile-per-hour wind behind you. So, there's a little bit of benefit there.
Doesn't work that way. It could practically blow you off this mountain.
You just go, but did you finish? What was your time? Because running.
Well, you have to buy the book. But
it's in the book. I like it.
I could tell you, I did. I succeeded in a way I never thought I could. When I reached the top on my birthday, the conditions were really bad. I mean, you boil. Your body generates so much heat, it's the equivalent of taking a liter of ice and boiling it. Jeez. And so your body's ability to deal with heat, which diminishes as you get older, becomes a huge problem, especially once you get up on the ledges of this mountain and the sun hits you. It's just like everything can fall apart. Plus, it was 60 degrees at the trailhead and 80% humidity. And I run best when it's in the 40s, just because of their ability to dissipate heat and deal with lactic acid, all this technical stuff. Anyway, I get to the top and I hit the watch. I didn't look at it because I realized I had this wonderful feeling that I was in the zone, that my ego had melted away. People who take psychotropic drugs say they feel the same effect. I was feeling that times a million, along with this tremendous gratitude. Thousands of people on this Facebook page I created had wished me luck. One friend had said, "My hand will be on your back," which was really moving. And I felt so wonderful up there on the summit. I felt like it didn't matter what happened. And then I looked at my watch.
I love it. Let's leave it right there. Let's leave it hanging. Please tell us, where can people get your book?
The book is Aristotle's Guide to Self-Persuasion. I also have a New York Times bestseller, which teaches the tools of rhetoric, persuasion in general. And that is, thank you for arguing. Yes. But Aristotle, Lincoln, and Homer Simpson can teach us about the art of persuasion. So thank you for arguing. Aristotle's Guide to Self-Persuasion are the two books that seem to be selling the most.
Can we just get it from anywhere, like Amazon?
All the fine bookstores, independent bookstores. If they don't carry it, ask them to. But yeah, online, whatever. I also have a Substack newsletter. Just look up my name on Substack.
Yeah, we'll put everything down in the description so folks have easy links to get to all of your stuff. Well, thank you very much, Jay. Really looking forward to reading the book and seeing the ending, how you made it up the mountain and then what your time was.
Well, thank you for this. It's such a pleasure. Loved your questions.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too.